2 boyfriends back home, thinking that's the last thing I'm going to meet up with a boy.
Is a boy.
I don't need a boy. Well, I got one that lasted 40 years. I think God places things in your life.
At 79, Dolly Parton names the 7 artists she had pleasure with, and the world is losing its mind. For decades, Dolly has kept her romantic history wrapped in mystery, tucked behind that iconic smile and Southern charm. But now, the country legend is finally pulling back the curtain, revealing the truth about the 7 famous men who once shared her heart and her secrets. From unexpected industry giants to names fans never imagined, Dolly's confession is rewriting everything we thought we knew about her. So who did she mention? Let's unravel them. Number 7. Kenny Rogers. Kenny Rogers was not merely a musical collaborator in Dolly's life. He was a force that seemed to draw her in with a gravity that felt both irresistible and inevitable. From the first time they sang together, there was a spark, an almost electric chemistry that lingered long after the microphones were turned off. Their voices intertwined effortlessly on stage, but what truly defined their connection was what happened away from the public eye. The late nights in recording studios became a backdrop to something far more personal. Conversations that started as discussions about lyrics or harmonies would drift seamlessly into confessions, laughter, and unspoken desires. It was as if the world outside ceased to exist, leaving only the 2 of them in a cocoon of trust and temptation. Kenny had a way of making Dolly feel intellectually seen, not just admired for her looks or her voice. He was patient, curious, and deeply attuned to her thoughts and emotions. In a suite in Las Vegas, hours stretched into a night that was charged with unanticipated intimacy. The city lights outside became meaningless, overshadowed by the intensity of connection inside the room. He listened as much as he spoke, valued her opinions, and celebrated her creativity in ways that left her feeling validated and cherished. Those moments went far beyond the casual affairs that gossip columns might have imagined. They were intimate exchanges that lingered in memory long after the physical closeness ended. Dolly remembers the vulnerability that came with letting herself be open with Kenny. Their bond was as much about comfort as it was about passion. Sunrise conversations and shared silences became a ritual of understanding and mutual respect. Each encounter left a mark on her, an imprint of emotional depth that few ever got to witness. Even when professional obligations and touring schedules pulled them apart, the connection persisted in the way he understood her without words, and the way she could rely on him to meet her in that rare, delicate intersection of passion and tenderness. This was not a reckless affair, but a sacred space where 2 people could be fully themselves, exploring intimacy without shame, fully aware of the trust and emotional investment required. In a world that constantly sought to define them by gossip and public appearances, their relationship remained a private sanctuary, a chapter in their lives that defied easy explanation but left an indelible mark on both. Kenny Rogers represented the perfect combination of emotional intelligence, charm, and sensuality. His presence taught Dolly how to navigate intimacy with respect, understanding, and, above all, authenticity. It was a lesson in human connection that would inform every other relationship she experienced, shaping her expectations and desires. The intensity of what they shared lingered, a memory both exhilarating and grounding, a reminder that passion is most profound when coupled with emotional resonance. As the sun set over the Las Vegas skyline, Dolly realized that the experiences with Kenny were only the beginning of a journey through some of the most legendary and complex men in music history. Her heart had already danced with passion and intellect, but the storm was far from over. Next came a man whose intensity would rival Kenny's charm, whose raw emotional depth would leave her transformed. Kris Kristofferson. Number 6. Kris Kristofferson. Kris Kristofferson was the embodiment of raw, unfiltered intensity, a storm wrapped in the guise of a poet, soldier, and songwriter. From the moment Dolly encountered him, there was an undeniable pull, a sense that she was stepping into a world both exhilarating and dangerous. His reputation preceded him, a man of courage and creativity, whose experiences as an Army Ranger and scholar lent him a mystique few could ignore. But it was the emotional depth that truly captivated Dolly. There was something in the way he observed the world, in the way he expressed vulnerability through words and music, that made every interaction with him feel alive with electricity. Their relationship, though brief, left an enduring impression. It was a tempest, fierce, consuming, and transformative. Moments of quiet intimacy were interspersed with periods of emotional turbulence, the push and pull creating a dynamic that neither could resist. Kris had a way of reaching into the core of her being, drawing out her fears, desires, and unspoken dreams. In return, Dolly offered the same vulnerability, a willingness to share herself without reservation. There were no pretense or barriers, only the raw honesty of two people drawn together by forces they could not control. Kris read her poetry, dissected her lyrics, and engaged with her creative spirit in a way few men had. Their conversations spiraled into the night, a heady mixture of intellectual exchange and emotional confessions. This was a connection that went beyond physical attraction, though the physical side was undeniably present, marked by intensity and immediacy. It was an intertwining of souls that left her both exhilarated and unsettled. In the chaos of their passion, Dolly discovered parts of herself she had never known, strengths and vulnerabilities that would shape her identity as both a woman and an artist. Despite the intensity, there was a profound beauty in their connection. Kris taught her that intimacy could be a crucible for growth, that love did not have to be safe or conventional to be meaningful. Every glance, every word, every fleeting touch carried significance, embedding memories that would persist long after their paths diverged. The affair was not scandalous, it was soulful, a chapter of deep emotional and creative exploration that defined her understanding of human connection. Their time together was a dance on the edge of control, a whirlwind of passion and reflection. Kris challenged her, questioned her, and celebrated her in ways that left her both breathless and inspired. The storm he brought into her life was as educational as it was intoxicating, shaping her perspective on desire, trust, and the courage it takes to fully embrace a relationship without compromise. As their brief but unforgettable affair ended, Dolly carried with her the intensity of Kris's presence, a blueprint of emotional and physical exploration that would inform every connection thereafter. If Kenny had been the warm sunrise that illuminated her heart, Kris was the lightning strike that left her forever altered, reminding her that passion could both elevate and consume. Yet, just as she was learning to navigate the complexities of raw intensity, another force awaited, a man whose duality of power and vulnerability would challenge her perceptions in ways Kris never could. Porter Wagoner, her mentor and the architect of her early career, was next, and his presence would take their entangled mix of professional and personal intimacy to unprecedented heights. Number 5. Porter Wagoner. Porter Wagoner was more than a figure in Dolly's career. He was a force of nature whose influence extended far beyond the stage and recording studio. As her mentor and the man who had propelled her into the spotlight, Porter was a towering presence, commanding respect and admiration. Yet behind the polished public persona, there was a complexity few understood. Porter's charisma was intoxicating, his energy magnetic, and his passion overwhelming. It was this combination that drew Dolly in, weaving a connection that was at once professional, emotional, and undeniably intimate. Their relationship was built on a delicate balance of mentorship and desire. Porter had a vision for Dolly, and she trusted him to guide her through the treacherous path of the music industry. But the intensity of their collaboration often spilled into the private sphere, blurring the lines between work and passion. Porter's insistence on excellence, his exacting standards, and his protective nature could be both exhilarating and suffocating. For Dolly, it was a dance, sometimes harmonious, sometimes chaotic, but always electric. There were moments when their professional tension gave way to personal vulnerability, revealing the complicated humanity beneath the public image. In those private moments, Porter was no longer just the mentor. He was a man capable of deep connection, fierce passion, and unwavering intensity. The intimacy they shared was turbulent, a collision of personalities equally matched in ambition and desire. Porter's control was a double-edged sword, offering security and guidance on one side while demanding submission and trust on the other. Their encounters were not casual. They were imbued with the weight of emotions that neither could fully articulate. For Dolly, being with Porter was like navigating a storm, beautiful, terrifying, and impossible to ignore. Each meeting left her feeling both empowered and exposed, a paradox she would come to understand only in hindsight. Porter's influence on her as an artist mirrored his impact on her personal life. He taught her the courage to pursue her dreams relentlessly, the strength to endure heartbreak, and the resilience to walk away when necessary. Yet, their private relationship added layers of complexity to her growth, challenging her to reconcile ambition with vulnerability, independence with desire. The chaos of their connection shaped her understanding of love and intimacy, showing her that passion could be both a source of inspiration and a test of endurance. There were nights when their closeness was tender and playful, and others when it was charged with a tension that bordered on the unbearable. Each moment reinforced the lesson that intensity could be transformative if navigated with care. Even after their professional paths diverged, the imprint of Porter's presence remained. The lessons learned, the risks taken, and the emotions experienced became integral to Dolly's evolution as a woman and an artist. Porter was a mirror, reflecting both her strengths and vulnerabilities, and forcing her to confront the complexities of human connection in its rawest form. Their relationship was a paradox, simultaneously nurturing and consuming, grounding and electrifying, public and secretive. As Dolly emerged from this whirlwind, she understood that the world of music and passion was never simple. The experiences with Porter were a masterclass in emotional and professional intensity, leaving her ready for encounters that were lighter yet equally transformative. Next would come Glen Campbell, whose warmth, charm, and playful intimacy would provide a striking contrast to the storm she had endured with Porter, revealing a different side of passion altogether. Number 4. Glen Campbell. Glen Campbell entered Dolly's life like a burst of sunlight, a presence that radiated charm, ease, and effortless warmth. Where previous relationships had been marked by stormy intensity, unpredictability, or the weight of professional dynamics, Glen offered something entirely different, an intimacy grounded in joy, playfulness, and a gentle, soothing energy. There was an immediacy to their connection, a sense that with Glen, the world could be left behind and the heart could breathe freely. Every encounter felt natural, unforced, and profoundly comforting, as though the two of them had discovered a secret world that existed solely for their shared moments. Their intimacy was not defined by chaos or the complications of ambition. It was marked by simplicity and mutual appreciation. Glenn's presence had a calming effect, a quiet reassurance that allowed Dolly to explore vulnerability without fear. Hotel rooms between tours became sanctuaries where music and emotion flowed together seamlessly. Glenn would strum his guitar while Dolly sang, and in those shared moments, the line between artistry and desire blurred effortlessly. Their connection was sensory, poetic, and immersive, built on the kind of understanding that comes when two people genuinely enjoy each other's company and trust each other completely. There was a softness to Glenn's touch that set him apart from the other men Dolly had known intimately. His attentiveness, gentle humor, and natural charisma created an environment where intimacy was a pleasure rather than a challenge. He had a way of lifting tension, making even fleeting encounters feel like a gift. Every interaction was infused with laughter, shared stories, and the quiet satisfaction of being understood. In Glenn, Dolly found a partner who could mirror her joy, celebrate her creativity, and provide moments of reprieve from the relentless intensity that often accompanied fame and desire. Despite the ease of their connection, the intimacy with Glenn was never superficial. There was an emotional resonance that deepened with every encounter. He had a way of listening without judgment, of responding with warmth and sincerity, and of making her feel not only desired, but cherished. In a life filled with public scrutiny and relentless expectations, these private moments became sanctuaries, teaching Dolly that passion did not always need to be tumultuous to be profound. The simplicity of their bond highlighted the beauty of trust, patience, and shared happiness, a stark contrast to the tempestuous intensity she had previously experienced. Glenn's presence illuminated a new understanding of intimacy, that pleasure could be gentle, that connection could be playful, and that love did not always have to come with chaos or risk. It was a lesson in emotional balance, a reminder that desire could coexist with comfort, and that passion could thrive in environments of mutual respect and delight. Their relationship was a tapestry of laughter, music, and affection, leaving Dolly with memories of warmth and a sense of emotional equilibrium. As the sun set on this chapter of her life, Dolly recognized that while Glenn brought light, the journey of intimacy would soon demand a return to the wild, magnetic energy of intensity. The next man was a force of nature whose raw, untamed passion would challenge her heart in ways both thrilling and dangerous, proving once again that love and desire were never predictable. Number 3. Waylon Jennings. Waylon Jennings arrived in Dolly's life like a storm on the horizon, wild, untamed, and impossible to ignore. Known as the outlaw of country music, Waylon carried with him a reputation for rebellion, intensity, and unfiltered honesty. But it was not just his persona that captivated Dolly. It was the raw energy that radiated from him in every glance, every movement, and every word. Being with Waylon was not about gentleness or subtlety. It was about surrendering to a force that demanded to be felt fully in mind, body, and soul. His intensity was magnetic, drawing her into a whirlwind of passion that was as unpredictable as it was exhilarating. Their connection was immediate and undeniable, fueled by a mix of desire, danger, and thrill. Waylon did not rely on poetry, charm, or tender gestures. His allure lay in his raw honesty, and the unfiltered way he expressed himself. With him, intimacy was electric, sudden, and consuming, leaving no room for hesitation or pretense. Every encounter carried the sense of survival within the chaos. A beautiful storm that swept them both into moments of wild abandon and profound awareness. It was an intimacy that demanded courage, and Dolly found herself exhilarated by the intensity and unpredictability that defined their connection. Waylon's passion was as physical as it was emotional. He pulled her into his world without explanation, creating moments that were unpredictable and unforgettable. There was no formula, no expectation, only the present, charged with energy and desire. Their time together could feel overwhelming, yet it was also liberating. He showed her that passion did not always have to be tender to be meaningful, that love could be expressed in bursts of intensity, and that surrendering to someone else's energy could bring a profound sense of exhilaration. With Waylon, she learned to embrace the thrill of the moment, to accept chaos as part of the experience, and to find freedom in vulnerability. Despite the intensity, there was also a peculiar kind of intimacy that emerged from the rawness of their connection. Waylon allowed her to explore her own strength, to navigate desire without fear, and to engage fully with the emotional turbulence that came with being with someone so untamed. Their time together left her breathless, exhilarated, and forever changed. An indelible lesson in the power of passion, unpredictability, and the human capacity to feel fully alive. In the aftermath of each encounter, she carried a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration, a reminder that true intimacy could be both thrilling and transformative. Waylon Jennings taught Dolly that some connections do not need to be safe or comfortable to be meaningful. Their affair was a reminder that love and desire are multifaceted, capable of encompassing chaos, intensity, and vulnerability all at once. He was the living embodiment of passion in its most raw, unfiltered form, leaving an imprint on her heart that would never fade. Yet even amidst the storm, Dolly recognized that life and intimacy would continue to take her on journeys of contrasting energies. After the wild intensity of Waylon, a softer, gentler intimacy awaited her. The next chapter of her story would introduce a man whose quiet warmth, soulful presence, and tender care would offer a calm, grounding counterpoint to the storms she had navigated, proving that love and passion could exist in vastly different forms. Number 2. Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson entered Dolly's life like a gentle breeze, carrying with him a calm, soulful energy that was a stark contrast to the chaotic intensity she had experienced with Waylon. Known for his quiet charm, musical genius, and thoughtful presence, Willie offered an intimacy that was nurturing, tender, and emotionally grounding. Where previous encounters had pushed her to the extremes of passion or turmoil, Willie provided a sanctuary, a space where affection was steady, comforting, and unhurried. In his company, Dolly discovered the beauty of calm, deliberate connection, a lesson in intimacy that relied as much on trust and care as it did on desire. Their relationship grew organically, evolving from friendship into occasional intimacy marked by warmth, patience, and profound emotional resonance. Willie's presence was reassuring, a steady anchor in the whirlwind of fame and personal entanglements. His touch was deliberate, yet gentle, conveying affection and tenderness in a way that left Dolly feeling cherished and safe. Unlike some past encounters, where intensity or chaos dominated, her time with Willie was soothing, filled with shared laughter, quiet moments of reflection, and an unspoken understanding that connection could thrive without drama. This was intimacy as sanctuary, calm, deliberate, and deeply human. Willie's sensitivity and attentiveness made every encounter meaningful. He listened with intention, responded with care, and engaged with her emotions in a way that made her feel both seen and valued. There was a profound mutual respect in their moments together, a recognition that intimacy could be both pleasurable and nurturing. Even the simplest gestures, a hand on the shoulder, a warm glance, a shared song, carried a depth that left lasting impressions on her heart. Through Willie, Dolly experienced a version of love that was steady and sustaining, where vulnerability was met with gentle affirmation rather than fiery intensity. Their moments of intimacy were often intertwined with music, a natural extension of their connection. Willie's humming, soft guitar strums, or spontaneous melodies became part of their shared language, creating a rhythm of affection that was both playful and deeply personal. In these encounters, passion did not need to roar. It could whisper, linger, and resonate quietly, leaving a profound emotional impact that endured long after the moments had passed. Willie embodied a version of intimacy that was healing, restorative, and deeply human, a reminder that desire could be expressed without chaos, and that love could be gentle and sustaining. Dolly's time with Willie Nelson was transformative in its own right. It revealed that intimacy is not one size fits all, that love can take many forms, and that emotional resonance can be just as powerful as fiery passion. In his presence, she found a space to rest, reflect, and embrace vulnerability in a way that nourished her soul. Their connection was rare, sacred, and unforgettable, leaving her with memories of tenderness and care that would endure as quietly powerful chapters in her life. As Dolly reflected on the gentle warmth Willie brought into her life, she understood that the journey of intimacy was far from complete. One final, unforgettable presence remained a man whose darkness, intensity, and emotional depth would challenge her in ways none of the others had. His allure promised to be dangerous, intoxicating, and impossible to resist, a dramatic climax to the story of passion, connection, and self-discovery that had defined her life. Number 1. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash was darkness and fire wrapped into a single, unforgettable presence. Unlike anyone Dolly had encountered, he carried a storm inside him, a complex amalgam of pain, intensity, and raw charisma that made every moment with him feel like stepping onto the edge of a cliff. There was an immediate magnetism that went beyond attraction. It was as if his very being demanded attention, drawing her into an orbit she could not resist. With Johnny, intimacy was never gentle or safe. It was a profound collision of desire, vulnerability, and emotional exposure that left no part of her untouched. To be with him was to feel every pulse of life amplified, a thrilling and terrifying immersion into the extremes of human emotion. Their encounters were rare, fleeting, and fiercely private, set against the backdrop of a tumultuous world in which Johnny navigated a complicated life with June Carter. The secrecy of their moments added a dangerous allure, a sense of trespassing into a sacred, forbidden space where the rules of society and expectation no longer applied. Being with Johnny required courage. He was a man whose passions were as intense as they were unpredictable. And Dolly quickly realized that closeness with him demanded both emotional openness and a willingness to embrace the intensity of his inner storm. Each touch, glance, and whispered presence carried a weight that lingered long after the encounter ended. Johnny's complexity was intoxicating. He was both tender and ferocious, carrying guilt, longing, and deep emotional scars alongside his commanding charisma. Being in his presence felt like standing before a force of nature, beautiful, unpredictable, and slightly dangerous. The intensity of their intimacy was not just physical, it was psychological, emotional, and spiritual. Dolly felt herself navigating uncharted terrain every time they were together, exploring depths of vulnerability and connection that few men had inspired in her. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition that their closeness existed on a plane beyond ordinary desire, a dance between light and darkness, control and surrender, safety and risk. Their time together was punctuated by an almost cinematic intensity. Johnny's energy consumed the space around him, making every moment charged with anticipation and unspoken emotion. When they touched, it was not merely physical. It was an encounter with a man whose heart and soul were laid bare, a reminder that true intimacy is as much about understanding the human spirit as it is about the body. Dolly learned to read the subtle cues of his mood, to navigate the silent language of his presence, and to engage with the emotional layers that defined him. Being with Johnny was never predictable. It was always alive, dangerous, and utterly transformative. Despite the shadow of his personal struggles, Johnny brought a sense of authenticity that resonated deeply with Dolly. His darkness was not performative. It was an integral part of who he was, a raw and unvarnished truth that demanded honesty in return. In him, she found a mirror to her own complexities, a reflection of desire, strength, vulnerability, and courage. Their intimacy revealed that passion could be intertwined with pain, that love could exist alongside guilt, and that the human heart is capable of extraordinary depth, even amid turmoil. To be with Johnny was to confront the full spectrum of emotion, to embrace uncertainty, and to surrender to the gravity of connection without reservation. There was also a haunting beauty in their encounters. In the quiet, private spaces they shared, he would sometimes hum softly, his voice carrying the weight of experience and longing. Each note, each gesture, seemed imbued with meaning beyond explanation, a silent language that only the two of them understood. It was in these moments that Dolly felt the paradoxical nature of their connection: danger and safety, chaos and calm, passion and introspection, all coexisting in a delicate, fragile balance. Johnny taught her that intimacy does not have to be safe, easy, or conventional to be meaningful. Sometimes, the most unforgettable connections are those that leave the deepest marks precisely because they challenge, provoke, and illuminate. The intensity of Johnny Cash's presence left an indelible imprint on Dolly. Unlike the other men she had loved, he demanded an emotional engagement that was absolute, a surrender to complexity that reshaped her understanding of desire and connection. With him, there was no compromise, no half measures. She experienced a form of intimacy that was all-encompassing, immersive, and unforgettable. It was a final, dramatic crescendo in a lifetime of relationships, a testament to the power of passion, the intricacies of human emotion, and the capacity for love to challenge, transform, and endure. As the chapter of Johnny Cash drew to its close, Dolly reflected on the profound lessons learned. That passion is not always gentle, that love can be both terrifying and irresistible, and that the human heart is capable of extraordinary depths when exposed to intensity and truth. Johnny was the culmination of her journey through love and intimacy, a reminder that the most transformative connections are not measured by ease or comfort, but by the emotional resonance, growth, and self-discovery they leave in their wake. She explains to the interviewer that these were not casual moments or fleeting entanglements. They were meaningful connections that helped shape her identity as both a woman and an artist. Each relationship carried its own emotional weight, its own lessons, and its own imprint on the person she eventually became. She reflects on how love, in its many forms, had been a quiet teacher guiding her through the pressures of fame, the demands of creativity, and the vulnerability of living in the public eye. She then touches on the importance of privacy during the earlier decades of her career. In a world before constant cameras and social media, discretion was both a protection and a necessity. She contrasts that era with today's culture of oversharing, where personal boundaries are blurred and every detail can be consumed instantly. Back then, some things were kept sacred, not to hide them, but to preserve their meaning. She acknowledges that each man in her past taught her something about life, passion, creativity, and her own inner resilience. Her confession reframes her image, revealing someone human, layered, complex, and unapologetically authentic. The interview closes with the reminder that true icons live fully, love deeply, and tell their stories only when the moment is right. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.